Hi folks, this is Brad with Raya Solar. So recently I had a conversation with a client of mine and it's actually bothered me since that day. So he just bought a new house and we had previously put solar on his other house a few years ago. But now he's renting that house. So I said, how's it going? So I asked him, did he sell the old house? And he told me he's renting it. But then we got talking about it. He explained to me that the new regulation in Massachusetts basically says that homeowners no longer can get evicted during this time because of COVID-19. But then he said, this is the part that bothered me. He said that if that person doesn't pay rent, he still has to pay the mortgage. So in other words, he could lose his house. And that could potentially have cascading effects, and he could lose his new house all because of a program that has obviously good intentions, but it could potentially have negative consequences for him and his family. And I think that's also true for things like perhaps like the PPP program and for unemployment and other programs. I heard another story about a woman, and she owned some sort of spa, holistic center. She had gotten the SBA Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP loan. So she was very excited. She had a shutdown. Her employees were all on unemployment. So she was so excited. She calls her employees, has a big conference call, says, great news, we can reopen. I can start paying you again. Instead of getting overly enthusiastic responses like she thought, basically what happened was people were not enthusiastic because they told her they can make more money staying on unemployment than going back to work. That is obviously not the intention of this program. So that got me to thinking of a book I read called Predictable Irrationality by Professor Ailey over at MIT. And in the book, he has many great experiments. So I'm just going to share a couple with you. One had to do with cheating. So basically, he had this test, basically a common knowledge trivia test. And he gave it to students, and the more points they got right, the more answers they got right, they would get a token. The token was actually worth like 10 cents or something. He had three groups. One was a control group he would give the test to, and these students actually would take the test, then hand it into a proctor, and then they would grade it, and that was it. The second group, there was a proctor in the room, but they would take the test. When they go to hand in the test, there's an answer sheet, and they would self-grade it and then hand it in. The third group would take the test, self-grade it, but there was no proctor in the room, so no supervision. So what do you think happened? If you think that students from groups 2 and 3 cheated, even MIT students, you are right. They all cheated. The average score was higher, but there was a couple interesting things from that that they found out. One, that they found out the scores in groups 2 and 3 weren't much different. It wasn't like students in group 3 that had absolutely no supervision were just now giving themselves perfect scores. That didn't happen. The funny thing is, they actually had scores almost equal to the second group. And if you think about it, the second group had some chance of getting in trouble, but the third group had none. And also, interestingly enough, of groups 2 and 3, nobody gave themselves a perfect score. So one of the things Dr. Ailey realized was even those people will take advantage of a situation. Basically, he said, if someone has the ability to take advantage of a situation, they'll do it. But they'll only do it to a certain extent. Built within us is this mechanism of restraint. And in case you're thinking it's only MIT students that do this, no, they replicated this test across universities all across America. Although you could say it's just Americans, but let's extrapolate and believe that this was just human nature. So then what he did was something very interesting. He did the same set of tests, except this time what he did was before any of the students in the control group, group 2, group 3 took the test, he would have them read and sign the MIT Code of Ethics. Now the funny thing is that the Code of Ethics actually doesn't even exist. He just made it up. But he had them sign this imaginary code of ethics, and here's what happened. All those students, even in groups 2 and 3, they did not adjust their scores. They didn't cheat. By just introducing the concept of morality before the exam, they decided to stick by the integrity, by the paper they had just signed. And this wasn't just true for the hypothetical MIT Code of Ethics. He would have them read the 10 Commandments before they took the test, and they didn't cheat, or other books or any form of morality or any moral code he would have them read, and the results were the same every time. When they thought about morality, they didn't cheat. Now, I'm not saying that someone taking unemployment is bad, not at all. Some people need it. I'm not saying that a renter, especially someone who's lost their job or in a hard financial situation, should pay rent that they don't have. Of course, I'm not saying that. So what am I saying? I want you to think of two things right now. 2 points. Point number one goes back to the introduction of morality. When you're making decisions, don't just make a decision based on what's going to give you the most money, what is the most short-term gain. You have to look at the decision from a holistic point of view. And the second point I want to make is when you make certain decisions, you will actually feel good or bad. The second point is you will feel good if you make decisions that are good. What do I mean by that? If you're sitting on your home, on your couch, binge watching Netflix and taking nice long walks with your dog every day because you're on unemployment, that sounds great, especially when you have the extra money in your pocket. But guess what's not happening? I saw this video by a great thinker named Simon Sinek, and that's S-I-N-E-K in case any of you guys want to look him up. And he talks about the effects on the brain when you are productive, when you're doing tasks and activities. And guess what? When you're going to work, what happens is every time you complete a task, your brain says, "Good job, buddy," and it's releasing dopamine into your brain. And the dopamine is the body's natural way of rewarding us for accomplishing a task. It's probably been ingrained and built into us for millennia. Second, similarly, when you do something good, what do I mean by that? An act of giving, an act of charity, an act of helping someone else out, you will feel good about it. There's a big difference between how your body responds to an act of charity than just to an act of kind of doing something good. Let me give you another example. The AARP had the AARP, which, as you know, serves an elder population, people over a certain age. They wanted to provide discounted legal services to their members because many members couldn't afford regular legal services. So they sent out a letter to all the lawyers and organizations they work with and said, "Would you provide discount services?" Here's what happened. Almost no lawyers responded that they wanted to participate and give discounted services. So the executives at AARP said, "Well, we're doing something wrong here. Let's try a different tactic. Instead of asking for lower discounted legal services, let's ask if they'd be willing to give pro bono, free legal services." And the results were dramatically different. Now, overwhelmingly, these lawyers were willing to give free counsel and do pro bono work. See, there was a difference in their head, right? There's a big difference between I'm going to discount my value and I'm going to do something out of the kindness of my heart. When you do something good, there's another chemical that gets released in your body, and that's called serotonin. So serotonin is that, like, you give someone a hug, that warm, fuzzy feeling. So every time we help someone, especially when someone's in need, that same part of us, those same chemicals released, and we just feel good. So what does that have to do with the renter? From what my client explained to me, that person could live in that apartment for months at a time, not pay rent, and then just leave, and there's nothing he can do about it. So it's a free ride. But what if that renter thought about his landlord? What if some of us may think, well, the landlord is the evil overlord, and he's a millionaire, and, he's not a good person. But that's not the guy I know, and I've known for years. The guy I know was living in that house and told me this plan that one day he can save enough money up and maybe rent that place out and get another house and in the suburbs, his dream house. And that's what he did. So it's kind of cool for me to see someone actually do something like that. But now he's at risk of, again, losing, his rental property and potentially even worse effects. I think if the person renting that house knew about that, I think there would be a different decision. Especially, let's say the person living there is still working or was not financially affected by COVID-19. If that's the case, then it's not a matter of money, really. The decision is really a moral decision at that point. And it's really what decision will make that renter's heart feel good. Similarly, let's look at the holistic center. You're that unemployed person, you're making nice money, you're enjoying your days. But what if you find out your boss, who has a mission to help people. Now let's pretend it's not a holistic center. Let's say it's a restaurant, a barbershop, whatever it may be. But they're serving the community, serving you, serving other people. They're serving the country. Let's just say the owner of the holistic center has bills. They have a lease they still have to pay. They have utilities. If they're a restaurant, those utilities are huge as they keep those freezers running. And what if the center or the restaurant or whatever, what if they had taken out a big loan to remodel the place years ago and they still have to pay that back? Do you think they're going to get somehow a forbearance or forgiveness on that loan? They might not be able to. If the employees go back to work, though, they can reopen. They can start generating business again. So in both examples, be it the renter, be it the person in unemployment, it's not just a matter of the short-term gain. What do you want to show to your wife, to your family, to your spouse? What moral do you want to pass on? What is the moral of your decision? Are you going to feel good about it? Are you going to go back to work and get that dopamine kicking back in again? Or maybe just the cause. What is a cause? A cause can be as simple as, if I go back to work, I am going to help my boss stay in business and not lose the business. Maybe that's the moral you want to pass on to your kids or children. And if you don't have kids, if you don't have a spouse, if you did, what would be the story you would want to tell about yourself? So what do I think? I think that you will make the right decision and you'll feel darn good about it. So with sincerity and hope, this is Brad with Ray of Solar.